Okay. All right. I think we're all ready now. Just want to say thanks once again to everybody for coming back once again. I apologize for not sending out our reminders. I'm getting progressively worse on the administration piece on some of this. So um, just to I hope to get back on track for that here, especially since next week I don't have to instruct. I can just do some of the administration pieces here because we'll be doing Firewise vegetation, which we are pretty excited about.
Yeah, we have special guest speakers next week.
That's right. So with this week's module, we're getting into rolling chipping day projects and a little bit more into details about what we're doing with these. You can go even further in detail than what we are covering, and I wanted to keep it separate from the more detailed issues like techniques for operating the chipper and then keeping the area clear. This is more at, I think, the ambassador level, and like we said last week, we were pretty high level on this information, and it would have been crammed in. It would have been tough to cram it all into 2 days, or into all into one day. So we're putting in the two. There's nothing, as we mentioned before, like lightning in a bottle type of thing. So, but we think these are good techniques that we've seen along the way with our particular efforts and the ones that we've seen with Becky. As a reminder, we're module 7 here, the more green than red now. Woohoo! Here, so
Good job.
can't believe we're here. Um, so next week, Firewise vegetation, and then we'll talk about preparedness, and then that'll be the last of the academic pieces, and we'll start getting towards the demo portions here. And we're still trying to work through a few details on the we call it the initial. We were looking at the chipping day. Yeah, here's something that we should talk about here. We're looking to adjust the schedule some in the chipper leader operations due to the different support things that we're looking at the beginning, and to provide more time for the chipping demo day. We're looking to do the we call it the chipper leader operator training on May 22nd, and then have the chipper or the chipping demo day in June, because we've been telling folks you need to get and give your residents time to do this. And as I started to look at this, we weren't setting a good example of getting folks time to get the neighborhood ready. So I think it's better to look at the month of June for the demo, and then if as folks are working here, if they want to do something sooner than that, you're welcome to do it. But for us to do our demo, it makes more sense for us to set a good example and do all the steps that we've lined up here and work the neighborhood going forward with that. So more to follow with that, but that's what we're looking at right now. Yep. Yes. So for an overview for today, we're just going to give a general description, look at the roles and requirements, a few equipment requirements, and you'll see or hear some repeats of some items we've discussed in the past, but I think it's good to repeat some of this information, and then look at safety requirements and considerations, and then the resident preparation, which I think is pretty important. So in terms of a rolling chipping day project, it's basically where you're dragging a chipper through the neighborhood, and that slash is processed and thrown back onto the resident's property. Of course, if you wanted to do so, you could have something follow where you would chip into a container and haul it off that way. That's another consideration, and you have to have additional logistical concerns if you're going to do that here. But we find that this will be more efficient, and then also that they will break down over time. You just won't be instantaneously. But the I think it's a good method here. It's worked out well for my neighborhood. I'll say that much for the past 8, 9 years. The Of course, there are options where you could have a team of workers follow the chipper through the neighborhood as it progresses through, or you could have or residents come out whenever the chipper arrives to their property. We'll talk a little bit more about scheduling towards the end. Generally, we've seen about 6 to 8 hours on a long day. I've seen 10 hours, and it's mostly in my neighborhood. When we work with them, we'll stop at around 3:30 here because we know by that time folks are pretty much done for the day. But I've volunteered in other chipping day efforts where the day has gone real long because honestly, a lot of people participated and there wasn't a cutoff. So that's a point for us to discuss here going forward too. So the typical schedule here that we use here, we'll do a meet and greet, and we do paperwork. We'll have folks sign off waivers for us. If you just decide to do that, that's a good time to do it. It's a good time for a team briefing, and it's also a good time to have everybody um, say hi, just relax and uh, be neighborly in that time period. So it's a good time um, for folks to get together and get you all on the same sheet of music going forward. Then we'll do and also like Lisa mentioned here, distribute PPE here, and yep, and, and then just generally get set up. The chipping operations will run through the morning time period, take a break, and then go after it again after lunch. And then, depending upon the day, 3:30, 4 o'clock. And also, as we get into the summer, weather dependent here, you might have to close it up a little bit early. But ideally, if everything works out, you're done between, somewhere around 3:30, 4 o'clock. And then maybe, if your neighborhood's close, you can, do a little bit of neighborhood bonding after that, towards the end of the day, if if you still have enough energy to do that type of thing. Different roles and requirements. There's we generally like to have a project leader, and this person understands the whole thing, assigns most of the planning duties, and coordinates with all of the folks. You have other folks that come in that are loppers and draggers, and for those, if you deal with firefighters or wildland folks, they'll call them swampers. That's the cool kids term. But those are the folks that drag limbs to the chipper and trees too. That you'll see some pretty sizable trees on some chipping days there. Then you have your chipper operators, and these are the folks that are specifically operating the chipper, and we strongly recommend that you limit those number of folks. But these are folks that are assigned to run that piece of equipment. Those folks are also responsible for doing the reservation, the pickup, and the return, and that should be considered in the planning to make sure that, for instance, you don't want to plan to start at 7 o'clock and find out that the place opens at 7. You can't pick it up until then. So that goes into your planning, but just understanding that that person or persons are responsible for the all aspects related to the chipper. And then you have folks that are supporting. These are, in my view, as important as the folks running the operation, and that if you if you get folks that are not fed and not watered, then they tend to wilt, just like a plant. So it's important to have those folks there and providing that support. And we like to have a safety monitor to ensure the safety of folks here. As somebody watching the mouth of the chipper, watching folks as they're getting tired, watching for traffic, those types of things, it's good to have a person. That doesn't mean that's the only thing they have to do, but it's a consideration we think is important to have there, and that person knows that they have that is their responsibility and has that mindset throughout the day. You got a snoring dog in the background. As far as the equipment requirements, we've talked about the chipper, and there's a distinct difference between the 6-inch and the 12-inch diameter chipper. If you're dealing with a high volume, you're going to want the 12-inch chipper because it's a stronger motor. It processes the trees faster. We worked with the 6-inch chipper, the kind that you can rent from like Home Depot, and it was really, really slow. So if you,
Slow.
yeah, it's like sloth slow, and not recommended. But if you're dealing with a place where you have access issues, that may be what you have to deal with. Like we went to, let's see, oh, Becky's coming in, and then silence an iPad. Okay, when we went in for Teresa, we did chipping a couple of years ago back in your neck of the mountains, not the woods, in the mountains. We couldn't bring a 12-inch chipper into some of those places because of the hills, the incline going into that. So you work with what you're able to work with, and you have to factor in the workload that you're able to do given that type of equipment. And so, just as we talked about before, you have to have the appropriate vehicle to be able to pull your chipper here. We recommend having a chainsaw. If you can have an electric one, then that's good and much safer for this type of work. And what we're talking about is to cut branches that some tree trunks, folks will not trim them, so they'll be greater than say 45 degrees with respect to the chipper mouth. So someone needs to cut it because it won't go into the chipper. So you should have something like that. Tree loppers also for smaller branches of that diameter and the like, or a handsaw to be able to take care of it. Otherwise, you're just going to wind up leaving it there on the side of the road.
Andre, I'd like to butt in here for a second.
Sure.
Okay.
Oh, sorry. So I think you got accidentally muted. Could you unmute Robert? Go ahead.
So I rented a chipper one time and the blade was not sharp. And I used it for a day and it probably worked 15 minutes during the day. So the most important thing for me, not the size of the chipper, but that the chipper you're getting has a sharp blade, because it makes a huge difference, 100 times difference. You can chip up 100 times as much stuff if that blade is sharp than if it's dull. So I don't know how you check that ahead of time, but it's important.
Yeah, just overall maintenance. And yeah, how do you check that ahead of time? We have had some issues different days with that.
I don't know of a way to do that, honestly speaking, but if I get burned once, I'll go and find a different company, honestly, to do that. If you don't have that option, then maybe that's a special request that you need to make with the business beforehand to make sure that it's sharp. Because yeah, these rental companies, they need to use the chipper to to help pay for it. So if you've experienced a concern with that particular company and that's the only one you have to work with, then I would communicate your concern with that. We've been pretty lucky, at least in the Colorado Springs area. We normally rent from, and this program's not sponsored by them, but Bill's Tool Rental, and we've had good luck with them along the way. And so it all depends on the company, very much so. So I completely agree with, if you have a bad chipper, then your life's going to be pretty tough. We've had some also where I will say this: we had a chipper where it was getting clogged, or we had a loose belt, if I remember right, on the chipper, and we worked with an organization that had their they bought their own chipper, but they didn't have a good maintenance plan for it, and it was breaking like in the first hour. And there's nothing more frustrating to have to do that. When we worked with Becky's neighborhood once, we had one that clogged up in the middle of it, and we basically had to take it apart there. I think we lost about an worth hours worth of time, and that one was more so something happened versus the chipper didn't work very well. So those types of issues happen here, so you have to plan accordingly for them, or at least consider it. Let's see. Becky gave us this idea.
I'd almost say have a backup ready to go from the rental company if you're going to rent one. Just let them know ahead of time. Hey, if we get out there and it doesn't work the first half an hour, we're going to come back and get a different one.
That's a good suggestion too. I've had them consider coming out to us to take a look at. I think one time we had a technician or one of their maintenance folks come out with us. That was a long time ago, though, maybe about 6-7 years ago. But yeah, those are all options to have in your back pocket. So make sure you have their phone number handy here. If you have to bring it back to them, then that's going to be, at least a couple of hour break in your effort here, all dependent upon travel time and whatnot. So the having an ATV with a small trailer to pull cooler for water, or having tools like rakes, etc., is very helpful. That worked out really well for their neighborhood, and I recommend folks do that as well. You could put all of that, of course, in the back of someone's truck that is in the convoy. So however you want to do it, but we thought that was a really cool way to be able to bring that about. And having a blower and extra batteries for it. So we like to leave the street how it was before the whole chipping day. So making sure that you clean up after the chipper leaves is, I think, a really good thing, and it provides a good appearance for the neighborhood and a good impression on the neighborhood that you're prepared for all of that. So making sure that you have those little extras like the extra batteries for the blowers is an important thing. We emphasize, as we're doing this on the safety piece, making keeping a space clearance for sawyer operators. If anybody's going to use that chainsaw, that there is a wide berth. I've seen folks slinging chainsaws around with other people around, like near where the slash is being brought to the chipper. If you're going to have that, have some understanding with your group that you're going to drag that slash away, and if there's a chainsaw that it's going to operate well away from everybody else. Also watching for that chipper throw clearance area, making sure that folks understand that. I think we talked about that somewhat. And then in your plan, also consider your wood direction for blowing chips. So if you know that it's the prevailing winds come from a certain direction, then consider that in your flow plan if it's all possible to do that, at least in terms of where you're going to put the chips. You can consider that in that aspect here. And then your chip pile locations, the resident may have some ideas of where they want the chips. So, ask them as they're, going through the neighborhood. They may have some bare spots that they would want to have the chips on to help with some of that erosion. So, food for thought, and moving the chips around, having that space and identify them. If you can have the residents tell you where you want them to, where they would like them to go, then it will be helpful for them in their post chipping day efforts. Otherwise, you're going to choose that for them. And we like to emphasize that folks that are chipper operators wear the helmets with some sort of face guard, and wear the chaps, safety glasses, all of those things that you see there. We've seen it's mostly usually with the um, older dead wood that long branches will break apart as it goes through the chipper and sometimes will fly back. Not so much with the green wood, so you don't see that as much, but if you're dealing with older stuff, then that's a particular concern. Or you may see stuff that's flying around, like either swinging around from different branches. You never know how it's going to twist as it goes into the chipper and how that may fly and hit folks. And some folks will turn around looking to accept chips and then turn back towards the chipper, or accept slash looking to put it into the chipper and may get affected that way. So we push that pretty hard with that. And then draggers and loppers, we recommend helmets and safety glasses. I know folks don't necessarily want to wear the helmets there, but if you get folks that are, slinging branches around, you'll be thankful that you have them. Yep, I talked about that, the slash swingers and that guy that brings everything. They want to carry the whole load themselves, and they're not cognizant of where they are. Don't want to have folks leaning into the chipper mouth, slips, trips, and falls, and looking at folks and there has the weariness and the dehydration in that particular day. You want to make sure you have a first aid kit available to you and a person that is very knowledgeable in CPR and first aid, especially something that, for significant injuries along the way. So don't have one that you would just have for little small cuts, although you want to have that aspect. Make sure that you have stuff available to you in case a significant injury occurs. For workers, make sure that you recommend that, we talked a little bit about this, but steel toe boots, hard sole work boots, long sleeve shirts and pants. We've seen folks come in with shorts and t-shirts, not so much the flip-flops like they had in the post-flood thing for Waldo Canyon, but we do see folks come out in shorts and t-shirts, and you can have folks get scratched up here. So you want to recommend that they wear that and have it loose, don't have it tight, so then you have an opportunity to cool off. It does get hot, and if you have your clothing loose, then that's very helpful. Wearing the dust mask is not just a COVID thing for us. You can see lots of flying chips if you have a windy day, so we recommend that. And then get your hat on and your sunscreen too. You guys may recognize this person here, but we talked about the Sawyers and having the extra equipment with the chaps. There is a video we like to. I'll be happy to send to you if you want. But some folks were insistent that if they're going to do any kind of cutting in and around, that they're good with having ceramic toe boots. A chainsaw will cut right through that like a knife through butter. So if you're going to operate it, we recommend that you have steel toe boots. Firefighters are a different situation. You may hear that they're working with ceramic toe. It's different for them because in and around wildland fires, if they're dealing with that and they have steel toe boots, the fire can get they're in such close proximity to the fire that it can injure their feet by having a steel toe boot, but they're much more skilled with their saw than your average bear. So we recommend that folks, still wear them if, your average citizen here. Let's see, before I get too far, we have a couple of comments here that I want to cover. Matthew mentions checking the blade is not too bad. Usually a hatch on top of the chipper side on some models. Yep. If the knife is dinged or nicked or obviously chewed up, it's dull. They come in shaving sharp. Yeah. They can be flipped. Blades have sides, and you may have to get to the rental facility to do this if the blades are particularly bad. I usually cut that beyond my skill set. So yeah, I'll bring something like that back to the rental company to do that. Beth has a comment. My son made the comparison. You can eat sliders all night long, but but just one hamburger would fill you up very quick. I'm not sure where. I must have missed that portion. Beth, is there a comparison can you elaborate on your analogy there?
Yeah, that's with regards to pushing stuff into the chipper. If you take little tiny piles, you can do it all day long and it goes just fine and quick. But if you take one big chunk thing, and a lot of guys like to carry the biggest thing they can find, and everybody else stands back and waits for 5 or 10 minutes while that big thing goes in. But if you do smaller pieces and smaller chunks, they go in faster.
Thank you very much. That's very much true, especially for that small chipper. We found that we were having to feed like one branch at a time instead of several for that one. And it's very much true for the larger one too. You'll see that sometimes it will hesitate because basically it can only process so much at a particular time. So that's a great description there, Beth. Let's see. At least we made N95 mass popular years ago. Yeah, by the way, it's not clear cutting. It was all dead trees burned in the Black Forest fire. Oh, yeah. So this is a post-fire cleanup effort that she's in this particular picture. But I like to let people know that Lisa handles a chainsaw. Nice. Dave mentions avoid steel toes in cold weather. They can cause frostbite. Very much so. Andre's solution to that is don't go do this in cold weather. But some folks don't have that option. Okay, so in terms of resident preparation, we recommend, and we took this one from Becky, and I think Beth does the same too for Red Rock Ranch, and they require notice from residents that they are going to participate in the chipping day, because you could get overwhelmed with the number of folks that signed up, and you can wind up having more residents than you have the time in the particular day or weekend to handle on that particular chipping day. If you have a weekend and you want to, you can estimate out how much folks are going to provide based on their amount of slash, and you can handle that, then that's fine. But we definitely, you want to be able to plan for that particular, you want to be able to plan your route, and then understanding that quantity of slash. So recommend, how much you're going to have. You're going to have a small pile, large pile, we'll call normal pile. You can set the norm based on however you want, based on your particular area. You can set up to sign up by a particular date or a deadline, or determine, hey, first come first serve. When we get out to 25, then we're cutting it off, so sign up as soon as you can. But recommend sending out that notice to residents as soon as possible, and then schedule no later than 1 month prior to the chipping and get that information out to them. For the location of the slash piles, our term is gift wrapping. Have it along the street, low piles, all the cut ends on the same side. So I've seen it work in different neighborhoods. Some folks will say that they have to be, running along the same, parallel to the street. Some will say 90 degrees to the street, however you determine that you want. But the really important part is that all the cut ends are on the same side. So then you can have folks taking from that end and then putting that into the chipper. Makes a big, big difference. So you want more piles on the left than you want on the right. Oh, I took my bad example. That's a bad example on the right. I must have cut it instead of copied it. But that the circle, there's a, if you can't see it, there's a guy in that circle. So that kind of gives you a relative size to that slash pile size. So you could go through a pile that you could, these.
Andre, can you let Kim in?
Oh, it looks like we have 3 people that just wanted to get entrance. Yep, and Bonnie also. Okay,
Yeah,
yep,
she said she was in, but then she got booted out. I missed a little bit there, but I'm so glad you have this picture of the good example and then on the left and the bad example on the right. Bad example. The worst example I ever experienced personally was about as tall as that one on the right. And it was me and a bunch of teenage boys, and it had been piled up for about 3 years, and you couldn't pull a stick out of there. And I ended up having to crawl onto the top of the pile and throwing one stick down at a time. I was not happy. We want happy chippers.
It's a lot of effort. You know, this could be hours here for that pile on the right. Untangling it, and also depends on how many folks you have available to you too. We had one in my neighborhood. We spent, and I think it was an hour and a half to 2 hours, and we had like 8 bubbas, you know, with it. It was just an incredible amount, and we didn't get notice on it until like we noticed it a couple of days prior. At that point, like the neighborhood decided to go ahead and chip it. They charged them a little bit more for it, but that made for that long day that I was talking about. We had 2 monster piles like that and didn't get notice on it. We also recommend, you know, provide a schedule and look at your estimates on time. It's different, you know, with the different pile sizes here, but look at what your route would be, and you know, if you are able to do that in terms of planning your route, then you can let folks know and give them an estimated time for your arrival. You know, there's going to be some variability in it here, but they could have a general idea, like if you're looking at early morning, late morning, or early afternoon for arrival of the chipper. I'm trying to convince my own neighborhood of that, and I can't get them to do that. So I just go out and help them anyway. But you know, if you're time crunched that day, it would be good to get with the planner with it. I think this is a good thing to help your neighborhood out and let them know what the plan is for them, and then they could look at maybe just a time frame for which they can be available and help a couple of neighbors in that time period.
I was going to say, with that, I like that idea about people just, you know, doing a couple of houses worth of help. However, you got to make sure that somehow they got to make sure they get the safety briefing and show up and get their PPE. So they could all meet in the morning for the safety briefing all together, and then go back home and putter around until it's their turn to help with their 3 or 4 houses.
That's a good point, Lisa, and I think that's what Becky does in her neighborhood. Okay, and this is the best neighborhood ever. I don't know if you guys noticed that, but it's a bunch of sports heroes live all in the same neighborhood. Okay, and then giving everyone the instructions, let them know what describing the plan of the day, the requirements, giving them the whole background on it, letting them know also the schedule along the way. I think it's a good idea to have this out to folks here ahead of time so that they know what the deal is going for that particular day.
Becky's got a comment.
Chippings during monsoon season need to start early to avoid afternoon thunder showers. Very much so. There's maybe we've been so lucky that we haven't had to end early, but we've had some days where we had to finish. We were planning to go to 3:30 and we finished, or we had to stop it at 1:30 because the thunderstorms were rolling in. So the earlier you start, unless you know you have a very small amount to do, the better you are, because anything after 12 o'clock becomes risky here.
One way to handle that too is like you said, sometimes the constraint is the chippers can't arrive until 8. So, but if you know that you really need to get moving, the chipper could still arrive at 8, but everybody else could meet earlier and they could do the safety briefing earlier.
Yep.
And be ready to roll. So, but you have to all communicate that a lot that way.
And then, after the chipping day is over, you want to make sure that the chips are spread out. Neither of these are good examples that you want to see overall in your neighborhood. I wasn't able to find a good example for it, but Vanessa, like Dave Root mentioned before, about, no more than about 4 inches spread out, 4 inches thick.
You see the problem on the what's happening on that picture on the left.
It's steaming. Yeah, and that's a wet pile too, so there's some moisture in with that. So there's some composting going on inside that particular set of piles there. Okay, that's it here. I know this was pretty quick here, but I want to open it up for questions and discussion for this particular set of slides.
Oops. Sorry, that was my dog. Has anybody else got a question? I've got a couple things to. Oops, I'll turn my camera back on.
Well, let's see if Becky and Beth, since they're both here, any recommendations that they would like to bring in that maybe we didn't particularly discuss within our presentation.
You guys hit a lot of everything. We do have somebody that goes out and inspects piles and labels the piles before we go, like a week before we go. One of the reasons to label the piles is that just gets the word out that we are doing chipping and, sign up for the next time. And it's another good way to connect with the neighbor. Make sure you have their phone numbers so that when you're going to be driving up to their home, you can call them ahead of time and say, hey, be out in 5 minutes. We're going to be chipping there. And that way they can come out and they can help their house and the next house.
I took it out here. Oh yeah. For those persons that are non-compliant, and I think that's where Beth is going down here. Let them know that, hey, you're not, just because they put it out doesn't mean that you're going to take care of it. If they're not going to play along with the rules with everyone else, then, we're going to leave it there. And you're going to have to set a couple of examples. Like we had in our neighborhood, we told folks no large piles of pine needles. We understand that, pine needles fall off as you're bringing slash around, but we had folks that putting out massive amounts of pine needles here. And we told them, sorry, we're not going to take them. We said that in our email and we meant it. So, being disciplined about that kind of reduces that problem as you go along. But, give them a chance to fix it. If they're like, they have their slash all piled all kind of crazy and not gift wrapping it, let them know that they're not going to, you're not going to take it, but give them a chance to fix it. So I like that you guys go out and label it, Beth, there to let them know.
So somebody asked about how do we label the pile? We have those signs that you can get there, like realtor signs, really cheap. They have just a wire thing that sticks in, and it's a bright yellow Firewise sign. It may have the dates available, but wherever we put signs or we put caution tape on them, if there are more piles than we have signs, we have caution tape on them. And that way we know which houses have signed up, which houses did we agree to do, because with 200 homes, we can't do a whole lot in a day. And we find that we need to kind of stop at like 2 instead of 3. So, and then we pick those signs up as we go too. We collect all that.
Lucy has a question. Have you ever brought in a masticator in the process slash when practical and do you ever recommend burning slash piles? If you haven't seen a masticator, that thing's an awesome piece of equipment, but it's basically a piece of equipment that you can raise above a tree and bring it on down from the top, and it has a bunch of saw blades that are operating inside of it, and it basically turns that tree into basically small chips all the way down in a matter of seconds. The problem with that masticator is it's really expensive and a big piece of equipment. So we've never used it because it's beyond our means here. But if you could do something like that, you could take care of a lot. You could make your property fire adapted in a fairly short amount of time, relatively speaking. So it all depends on your resources. If you have the resources to be able to do that, then I definitely recommend bringing in people that know how to operate them and work them well. Now, in terms of burning slash piles, that's one of those pieces where you need to communicate with your local firefighters on that. In some places, it requires special permits to do that. So you need to do a consult with that. And then when you burn slash piles, as I understand it, you are responsible for that pile all the way through that process. So you need to work a special consult with your firefighters in your district with that one. Dave,
Yeah,
do you have any ideas or thoughts with that? Dave Root, that is.
I know the fire department does not stay there with you while it's burning. They just approve, like, they approve that you can do it because it's maybe winter time, and then the day you're going to really do it, they'll confirm that it's not really windy, but they don't sit there with you. You have to do that yourself for sure.
Yeah, it probably depends on your fire department, but I would not assume that they're going to come out and do the whole thing for you. Another problem with burning piles, especially in the low altitudes like Black Forest or Monument or Douglas County, is you really should have at least 6 inches of snow on the ground before you burn. And often we don't have winters where you get 6 inches of snow and you can't burn the piles. And they sit over the next summer as this big jackpot of dry fuel, or maybe even the next summer after that. So if you live here on the Front Range where the snow can be kind of spotty, maybe burning piles isn't the best way to go about it. Higher up in the mountains where you get feet of snow in the winter, yeah, I think there is a really, really good option.
When I did my S212 class up near this is near Salida and Buena Vista, the folks in that area actually would do wood burning piles in the winter. So they would plan it though, like Dave was talking about, and they would basically pile up areas where they would bring the slash into it. Especially there were certain dead trees that they were concerned about, like I think they may have had some beetle kill or something like that. But I saw, that they were piling slash and they planned for it though. It wasn't something that they were doing that in the heat of summer. Smina has a question. Have you ever had to use a log splitter? Yes, I own one. But we cut it first in basically sizes that we can use in making the firewood. I'm not sure if that's the point that you're trying to get at, but yes, I know how to use a log splitter and it's been fabulous.
Can I say something about that?
Sure.
It's really important to focus on what you're doing that particular day. I've been on a couple projects where the labor was just divided between the chipper and the log splitter, and that wasn't good. So if you're going to use a log splitter, make sure that that's a different separate day, and then all the logs are in fireplace length sizes, and then quickest way to chop off the end of your finger is with a log splitter if you put your hand in the wrong place. So, but it's really kind of fun also.
Yeah, it's a good way to process the trees and keep them on your property. too. So, and that's another one of those, get the group together type of efforts because, hauling that wood, that's some effort there. So, I think rotating that around, if you wanted to do that and then prep, some of those trees, like say if you wanted to have trees cut in and around your driveway or near the house where you wanted to get your firewise spacing and you wanted to take out those trees and then use them for firewood. That's what we did on our property here. And I think it's a good avenue. And then you can sell it too, if you want to do that.
I had, Andre, I had one comment back to chipping day, and this is just kind of an esoteric thing, but I think in the long run, it could save homeowners a lot of work and trouble. Is I've seen the slash piles stacked beside the road, and often roadsides are weedy. And I saw a stack of slash in the middle of a real bad patch of knapweed. And sure enough, as they grabbed the piles and shoved them through the chipper, they shoved some knapweed in through there, and you could see it happening. And the next summer, early summer, you just saw that knapweed germinating everywhere where those chips were thrown. So it's just kind of a detail that if you notice it and educate the homeowner about the potential problems with that, it could save them a lot of trouble down the road.
Thank you, Becky. Sorry about that. Somebody has the audacity to walk down the street in my neighborhood.
We can't hear them. You got your headphones on, so.
Okay, good. The other question Smina had, what collection solutions have been used by folks who haul off clippings? We found that the biggest consideration for if you're trying to do that all in one day is the cycle time between the location where you're dumping it and the trailer that you're able to use. If you're able to get a large trailer or numbers of trailers, if you're going to do that within the neighborhood, I recommend that you have multiple, and then also consider using dump trailers. It costs you a little bit more to do that, but the ability to get to a place and then just have that lift off and then drive off and it slides off is phenomenal. It saves on labor. It's well worth the money if you're going to do it that way. And then, there's some places that have the ability to bring slash to it and they don't charge you anything for it, whereas others do. Like our local dump here, we were bringing pine needles, I think we were doing here, and it cost for one load of those big tall Home Depot bags. I had
Bagsters.
yeah, I think I had somewhere in the neighborhood of 18. No, not a bag store. These are the paper bags that you can get, that you could put out with your individual trash. So they go up about maybe about 4 feet. It cost me $48 for one load of 18 of those. And then I said, I took a look at the Black Forest slash mulch area, and they charged me $20 for 12 visits. And so that was a huge cost saving, for that. So
But it was a
may
longer
take
drive, right?
well worth it.
Yeah.
I wasn't burning up $48 worth of gas in those particular trips, so it was a big savings for me. Lucy has a comment. I burn piles every winter when our fire department has an open burn day on adequately snowy days. So yeah, in some areas that may really work out for you. Let's see. Suzanne has a comment. Has anyone dealt with large debris that can't be chipped or logged, such as old, dead, rotted trees that have been laying on the ground for years, or large, rotted stumps? It seems that this kind of stuff needs to be hauled off somehow. I haven't had to deal with it very much, Lisa, Becky, or Beth. Any issues with you guys? Have you guys dealt with that very much?
Yeah, where trees have been cut, and I usually try to cut them about ground level. If you take like a 3/8 inch drill bit and drill a whole bunch of little holes in that stump, and then put potassium nitrate in. It's a fertilizer. You'll come back in a year, and those stumps will be well on their way to rotting and be gone. And so I'll cut it close to the ground so you don't have a stump sticking up, and then I'll drill it with that 3/8 inch hole, put a little water on top of that potassium nitrate. It washes it right into the wood. It feeds the bacteria and fungi that get started breaking that wood down, mostly fungus, but it breaks down really fast. It accelerates it tenfold to do that. And while you were discussing disposal of pine needles, I rake them away from my house, so I get these big piles. So I know what you're talking about. And I did a little experiment last summer, like in July, and I took a mulching mower and I just ran that mulching mower back and forth over those piles of pine needles. So it chopped them up into little bitty pieces. And the same thing, I put a little bit of fertilizer, not much, just a tiny, tiny bit, and watered them. And man, I checked it this spring and it's already just black, beautiful mulch, just exactly the kind of forest mulch you're looking for to retain moisture and keep your soil healthy under your trees and around and your whole property. It's what you would pay for. So I found that to be, I know I was the crazy lady mowing my pine needles. I know that, but it worked really well. And compared to hauling them off or other options that I'd considered, it seemed like really low labor with a plus of having really good compost at the end.
Hey, Andre?
Yeah, Dave.
Yeah, the question about chipping big logs or debris, if there's a big diameter log laying out there kind of by itself, it's probably not that big a fire hazard, may not need to be chipped anyway.
Yeah.
Isolated logs probably aren't a big issue, but big jackstrawed piles, like you were building a bonfire, are a big problem. Maybe you don't need to chip every dead log in the forest.
Yeah. And, I had someone tell me you're also helping the wildlife too. So if it's not a big deal, then maybe it's something that, you can be a benefit to nature.
Yeah.
The law. Also, Matthew made a comment here. Dumpsters can be effective, but a bit expensive, and that's towards Smita's question. Agree with that too, and it depends on your ability to finance it. Our homeowners association does, we call them duff bins, but we have a person that has a big wide open property, and for, I believe it's a period of either 3 weeks or a month, we leave that on that person's property and they put in, the stuff that won't work out, for a particular chipping day, or they missed it and they want to put stuff in there. But usually we try to get folks to put in, if they don't want to take Becky's option on the pine needles and they want to put it in that, then we do that along the way. So but takes planning, and it all depends on your waste management or waste disposal company and the rates that they provide. It works out well for us. If you're interested in that, Smita, I can coordinate with my homeowners association to find out, what they're paying for, just as a ballpark figure. I know it's going to be different everywhere. Let's see. Lucy mentions that once they are rotting, and she's referencing the rotted wood here, they're not really a fire hazard, should be left to finish rotting away in place, just like Dave mentioned. And Beth mentions we mow needles too in an area that's away from everything. So lots of different techniques with that here along the way. So it all depends on, what your area is like and what you can handle and what you're tolerant for, and that relative fire risk. So, remember twice the height of the flames, on that old rotted wood. Good questions, good comments too.
I have a couple of ideas to share. One is, as you're preparing your material to be chipped, don't overdo the work. Like you do need to gift wrap the piles, stack the wood correctly and stuff. But for example, if you have a whole bunch of really tall, skinny pine trees that are just, 20, 30 feet long, that's okay. You don't have to cut them up into smaller pieces. You can just, if the branches don't stick out too far, those can go right through the chipper. The important thing then is to make sure when those go through the chipper that everybody stands back 35 feet, because they'll swing around and swat you right in the head. So, but it's really fun to watch those go through the chipper, and then you get to do the little dance. There's a little dance that goes with that, and I'll show you if we get one of those on our demo day. So you don't want to over prepare the stuff, but you just have to understand what it's going to look like when it goes through the chipper. So that's just thought. And then another thing is, make sure when you're doing your safety briefing that everybody understands what the hand signals are, because nobody will be able to hear each other when you're trying to haul it. Nobody will hear you at all. And then you might, I think we sort of mentioned this, but making sure that everybody, I like how Beth labels the piles in Red Rock Ranch, because you don't want to have, you don't want to be like going from one pile to the next one. And then there's one in the middle that it's like, oh, we might as well do this one along the way, because it got added later. It's not really on the sign up sheet, and that doesn't work out. That's not okay. You gotta, it's so hard to pass one by, but if they're not on the list, you gotta do the priority for the people who got on the list first.
You can be nice about it, and you just have to be, firm with it. And it's not fun to do that, because you don't want to discourage anybody from participating in it. But then maybe next time when it comes around, that you can, be encouraging of them. And, if they have problems doing all of that labor themselves, then maybe, they're doing it that way because they're doing the best they can. So just find out if there are any constraints with them. They're just being obstinate. There are those folks that are difficult. Then you just have to be firm about it and just, do the best you can.
It's just hard for the volunteers to know, like, oh, we're not doing that one.
Or we've done this too. Okay, we're going to come by your house, but you get to do your pile yourself. We've seen that done as well. So if you don't want to play ball, we're happy to bring the chipper by, but this one's yours. At least the more difficult aspects. Okay. Other questions or comments?
So Becky, are you there? You wanna give a little preview about next week?
Oh yeah, okay. Next week, we are very lucky to have one of the top experts in the state on growing native plants and fire tolerant plants on your property. And her name is Irene Shonley, and she's published a lot of stuff, and she is going to show up and be on our Zoom meeting, and she's going to give us a little talk on the best plants for planting in the first 30 feet of your home, and that first really critical zone around your house. And we'll get to ask her questions too. So, and she knows a lot about how to actually grow those plants and where they need to grow and how they'll do and the challenges of growing them. So it should be fun.
Awesome.
Hey, I have one question for you guys.
Yeah, Teresa. Uh-oh, you went on. You're muted, Teresa. I didn't do it, I promise.
I have a difficult person in my community in regards to wood fires to make s'mores. Okay, I received a scathing email that she would violate restrictions just to make s'mores. So at this point, she happens to live right aside of me. Okay, so last year, 3 times during the fire ban, she had a wood fire. And I had to restrain my husband from just going over there and giving her major grief. But this year, I think I would like to report it. When is it reportable? When everything's banned, right?
So you have to wait for, I believe it's stage 2. And
Right.
that will be listed on the El Paso County Sheriff's website, and they will specifically say which stage it's in. And you're calling the El Paso County Sheriffs. They do have a non-emergency number.
Okay.
And what the El Paso County Sheriffs do is they send that, they forward that notification to the local fire department, and the local fire department will come out.
And
Oftentimes they don't.
Cascade will respond to that?
I beg your pardon?
Do you think Cascade will respond to that if it's a volunteer fire company that's not real active?
I don't know. I don't know what, are you in El Paso County?
Yes.
Then they might send a sheriff out. They don't always, they usually give them a warning the first time. Sometimes they give them a warning the second and the third time. But at least you have a paper trail showing that this is becoming a chronic problem. And that's the idea, is you want to establish the paper trail.
And the amazing part is, like in your house, you can look across the canyon and see the entire swath of the Waldo Canyon fire.
I know.
Right?
Every day. And this woman sent me this email that said that I will knowingly violate the rules. Because we're trying to put in a little section in our covenants that says, Matthew is the one that, Matthew Nelson gave us a lot of good information. So we wrote a little section and we're trying to get them to vote on it, you know. And she said, I will knowingly violate this if I want to make s'mores.
If you have a letter like that, that might be worth forwarding to the sheriff.
I didn't think of that.
Self-incrimination.
My word.
Talk about a paper trail.
Yeah, it's something so new to me, and it's like, I hate calling the sheriff on people, but geez.
We're talking massive loss of property because they want to have s'mores. And there are ways to be protective of fire too, because, you know, it doesn't have to be an open pit fire. You can still have certain types of fire in certain like stage 1, they could still do it. When you get into stage 2, it's a whole different game. Even cutting trees, you need to have a fire extinguisher out with you at stage 2, because if the heat of that chainsaw causes a fire, you need to be able to put it out, you know, right away. So certain conditions, that's just the reality of it. We were doing that in Red Rock Ranch, and I'll just say folks were not so happy with us when we went. I think it was, well, I'll just say one of the ladies that we were supporting, and we thought that she said that she would provide the fire extinguisher, and then when we showed up, found out that it was from 1997. And so takes a little, I couldn't count on that, so we were just doing hand sawing, which was more work, but I was not gonna be that guy that was gonna start a fire with a chainsaw. So
Audrey works for Department of Homeland Security.
Not a good thing.
She even let me know in that email that she has a fire extinguisher, but it isn't within the footage that we want to require, and it didn't sound like she was going to move it either. So
is there any way you could buy her a little tiny s'more kit that has those little sterno light things that she can do her little s'more kit in the house?
Okay, that's all I had. Thank you.
All right. Let's see. Mary Ellen has a hand raised. Did I catch you on that one, Mary Ellen?
You did. I wanted to say that 2 years ago when we did our chipping thing in the fall, we had either you contributed your time and your effort into chipping, or you contributed at least $50 into the cost of the chipper. So that worked for us. And it got people involved, and that's all I have to say.
A little bit of money goes a long way, you know, if everybody chips in,
Yeah.
you know, for that, literally, no pun intended or pun intended, that, you know, you can share the cost for that particular chipper, and that's way better than having to foot it all yourself. And just remember, as you're doing this, save your individual receipts here for your costs related to mitigation. If in our state, at least Colorado, Sharice, I'm not sure if this applies to you guys out in Oregon, but you can claim that against your state income tax return. So you'll get a break on your state income tax when you file that.
And one other comment, Mountain View Waste is who our garbage people are. And you can pay them, you can put up to 5 bags a week in with your garbage of those paper bags you were talking of with the pine needles. Doesn't make them go away, but it makes them go off your property.
Yeah, it's good to know what the limitations are. I put out like 15 bags of that one time with my waste management, you know, waste disposal company, and only 5 went away that time. Like, okay, I know now that's the limit for me.
Right. But I'm already, well,
That
prior to
helps.
this, no, but I was working on it already. So.
That's a great way of doing it as well.
Yeah.
Every little bit counts here, so use every technique that you can to take care of it. So many different ways to do this, folks. It doesn't have to be like we tell you on the chipping day. If you want to haul it away, you can do that. It may turn out to be a better deal for your particular neighborhood to be able to do that. So, but as you look at these solutions, try to look at the ones that will work for the most amount of people in your particular neighborhood. Or if you're going to do it, that you're going to do it in a small enough effort that it has a good benefit, you know, a deep benefit for a particular small set of folks here too. So, you know, look at different solutions and, you know, share them out here along the way. And speaking of collaborating, we were received a couple of ideas on the Facebook group here, so I don't want to publish it yet, but I think there are a couple of good ideas out there, and keep them coming. I don't want to limit anyone from providing it, but you know, we'll look to launch one here, at least a collaboration site soon. And this will be not specific to our area. It'll be very general. So Sharice, if you and your folks in your area want to participate and share and collaborate, it'll be available for you guys to participate.
And Sandy too.
And Sandy, that's right, up in Montana. Okay. Any other questions or comments before we go? Okay. Well, I want to say thanks.
There's a question about liability forms you use for volunteers as well as property owners. Are we going to share the forms?
Yes. Yeah. Ours are all wrapped up, and that's one of the questions I want to answer back in email to Smita. Ours is basically wrapped all in one type of thing. We don't have one different for a volunteer or a property owner. It kind of encapsulates all of that all in one here. But we have a couple of different examples. That we have the one that we use, and then also some from Fire Adapted Colorado. I think it's Fire Adapted Colorado, but one of our partner organizations, they have 2 examples in that. So we need to put that out. I need to take a note on that one and then provide those to the group. And you can craft them however you want, you know, after that. We recommend if you're really, really concerned about litigation against you, then, you know, having a lawyer take a look at it. Nothing prevents you from getting sued, but you know, the liability form will help you in your defense of potential litigation. So, all right. I think that's all we have for tonight here. If I could get Teresa and also Bonnie to stay on the line after we go, but just a reminder, next week we'll be doing Firewise vegetation, and we hope you guys can join us for that session. It should be fantastic, and we will record that one too, just like we were doing with this one. All right, so that concludes our session tonight. Lisa, anything before we go that you want to say? I want to cut you off.
Thanks for being here, everybody. We'll see you soon.
Thank
Okay.
you.
All right. Good night, folks. Take care.
Thanks, Lisa and Andre.
Thanks.
Thanks, you guys.